Brothers, sisters, working class heroes, this is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. You knew it was coming. You had to know. Donald Trump got it on purpose. He did it for us. Thank goodness that we have a leader powerful enough, manly enough, virile enough to see the danger and go right head first, right into it. Mushroom head first. Got the disease, took it on, beat the disease. He did it for us. Because why? Nobody who was a leader would not do what I did. Every leader, they would have gotten it. They would have walked in there like a man, unprotected, sticking his head right in there, getting the job done. Not pulling out until he was completely finished. That's our president. Man's man. I mean, I can do nothing but laugh at that, to be honest. Completely ludicrous and ridiculous. No other leader would do what you did, Ding Dong. Most other leaders were trying to avoid it. As I've said before, I'm the alpha male type. At least I believe I am, or I've been told I am. I'm a fatalist. I believe when it's my time, it's my time. But you don't see me jumping up and go, "Hey, over here, come get me." Look, I'm not hiding in a hole, but you don't see me, buddying up in a big crowd, going, "Come on, let's all huff in a big circle. Come on over here, let's have a threesome." Or a 30-some, or a Rose Garden event, for instance, where we demand people don't wear masks, where we do really dumb stuff. So now, I mean, stop and think about this for a second, because I'm starting to think about this. If my kids come back to me after getting into some kind of trouble, go, "But Dad, I had to do it. I had to show my friends that I'm a leader. But it was stupid and irresponsible." Well, still, I had to lead the way. Oh my gosh. I mean, and the thing is, and this is the amazing part, there are people freaking gullible enough to buy it. See how much Donald Trump cares for America? He's willing to make himself sick to prove that the virus don't mean nothing. That's a true American. I mean, seriously, there are people out there who that's how the wheels between their ears spin. At some point, you got to go. Maybe someone smack, like a man does. When something's broken, you reach over, you take a fist, you pound on it. Maybe that's going to help it. Maybe this is what we need to do to all these people who that's what's spinning between their ears. You ball up the little fist right on top of the head, a good pop. Maybe it straightens. Maybe you start thinking right to where you go. You're now claiming that you got it on purpose after just a couple of weeks ago saying I wasn't worried about it because there's all this barrier and all those people are way over there. I'm insulated. Now I went right through it. Again, this is another one of those moments where, which is the truth, which is a lie? Is it all the lie? Is it all a hoax? Yes. It's all a con. It's all political theater, and it's all for the dim and the poorly educated that he loves so much. And what's shocking to me is I live in the state of Pennsylvania that is the keystone of this election. And it is right now, the most recent Emerson College poll has it 50-45 Biden over Trump, 5-point lead. And that's going to shrink. Trust me, it's going to get a lot closer but in the next 28 days. You're going to see polls all over the place, and it's going to get tighter. It tells me that we're this divided, that half of this state, that half of the people, well, more than half of the people in my neighborhood, but half of the people in this state are looking at Donald Trump going, "Yeah, see, he's a man's man. got in there and got it done. Good for him. And then, like a man, took a joyride around Bethesda. Like a real man, walked up them there steps and ripped off that mask defiantly, like John Wayne would do. Like Ronald Reagan would do when he fought in the war. Except he didn't. It's crazy to me. So today, the big tweet that comes out, Trump tweets out, polls when he's angry about Joe Biden leading in the polls. He says, I don't know why Joe Biden's leading. He's against fracking, the Second Amendment, and religion. Fake polls. I will win Pennsylvania, he said. I don't think you're going to win Pennsylvania and he can't believe that he's losing Pennsylvania. I can't believe I'm losing Pennsylvania. Could it be the more than 8,300 people who have died here? Could it be the tens of thousands of people who have gotten the virus and didn't like a man go right for it? Didn't grab it by the what? Could it be that? Could it be the fact that you were so irresponsible that our state had to shut down? And I know we're not going to do it again, and we're going to suffer many more illnesses and many more deaths. That's painfully obvious to anybody who is watching this as an observer and like I am, and going, this is going to be a bad fall. We're going to have a bad 6 months because not all of us are going to get the kind of health care that he got. Not all of us are going to get the experimental drug, the antigens. Not all of us are going to be able to get what he got. We don't do that. We can't get that. It's quite remarkable to me when you think about it. And the weird thing is him complaining about, not winning Pennsylvania isn't even the craziest thing that he tweeted out today. I guess my favorite, well, hold on. He did have a tweet that Twitter actually took down because it was so poorly informed and it was flat out wrong about COVID. They did take one of his tweets completely down. The other, I think they should have taken down, but you can only do one a day, I guess. He tweeted out, Biden and the Democrats just clarified the fact that they are fully in favor of very late-term abortion right up until the time of birth. This is new. Right up to the time of birth and beyond. That's right. Not only do you have until the kid pops his head out, but as soon as the kid's out, you could just chop him up right there on the table, according to Donald, which he says, which would be execution. Biden even endorsed the governor of Virginia, who stated this clearly, because Democrats hate children. That's all I get from this. Democrats hate children, and we want to conceive them, and then we want to chop them up. That's what he's telling his base. Now, it's ludicrous, completely, totally bonkers, way off the deep end. But it's, again, another one of those moments where, lie, lie again, lie some more, lie more. And the thing that gets me is, he's on this Twitter explosion. I don't know what drugs they gave him. I don't know what's in the experimental drugs, but may have hurt his hearing because he's doing a lot of capital letter tweeting and tons of tweeting. It's like he's got nothing else to do. Like there's nothing going on in the country, like a giant pandemic or any of that stuff. There's nothing going on in the country. Don't worry about it. The sad reality is the economic numbers aren't that great. The economy's struggling. People are struggling. People are going to start losing their homes soon, being evicted and foreclosed on. Even freaking Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs came out and said today that if the Democrats were to sweep the House, the Senate, and the White House, that there would be a much faster economic recovery because Trump has been so bad for the overall economy. Now, for the very rich people and corporate, all the big shareholders, he's been really good. The tax code's been great for them. But for the overall economy, not so good. And here's the problem. What Goldman Sachs understands is this most recent little weekend of whatever the hell this has been, we're going to go right through it. We're going to man up. is going to harm the economy enormously over the next couple of months. Because while we may have the best drugs and we may have the best doctors and we may have the best all of that, we don't have enough of it for when the numbers start to spike and we end up back where we started from in like New York, and that spreads to major cities across this country, because you've got dimwits who are going to listen to this clown, who I still seriously question whether he had a true positive. But if he did, whatever these miracle drugs that he was given, which I'm told are $100,000 a dose, you and I are not going to have access to. And you and I are going to be the ones who suffer and die from this. And look, it's not a high rate, but it's going to be high enough that we're all going to know somebody. And it may not be you, may not be your kids, but maybe grandma and grandpa. And as I joked with a good friend of mine, so what, your father goes a couple years early? We needed cheesecake, man. To which he hung up, rightfully so, hung up on me. And that's the right response to this. The right response is to hang up on this idiot. And yet what he's saying, and now you've got Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, saying, we got to learn to live with this. It's going to be with us. We got to learn to live with it. And look, I get the idea that you got to live your life. But this idea that we're just going to swing the doors back open and we're going to have, mass crowds and, we're going to go back to let's go back to Sturgis and let's have the big concerts with 20,000 people. And this is where these people want to go back to. And if you watch the little videos that he made, he's very clear about the fact that he doesn't care. He also tweeted out today, flu season's coming up. Many people every year, sometimes over 100,000, and despite the vaccine, die from the flu. Are we going to close down our country? No, we have to learn to live with it. Just like we've learned to live with COVID in most populations, far less lethal, whatever that means. What he's trying to say is you're going to get it and you're going to get really sick, and you're not going to have health care, and it's going to bankrupt you. And ultimately, again, the fear of this has always been that we're going to overtax our healthcare system, that we're going to have more people going to the hospital, more people on ventilators, more people in the limited number of ICUs, that we're going to overtax that. And it's going to cause mass chaos. But we're not capable of doing what should have happened from the beginning. And I said this back in March and April. We should have shut down, say Friday at 10 o'clock, we're shutting down for 2 weeks. You're not allowed out on the street. You're not allowed to go anywhere. You take your backside home and you stay home. In a couple of weeks, we could have been through it. But no. We've got the people who think, well, Donald Trump's he's a proud American. He's a tough guy. He took on the virus. Matt Gaetz, with that dork with his tweet. My feel for the COVID. Stupid. And the sad reality is stupid is running our government. And what I find most interesting, and this has been one of these, because I've been consuming a lot of right-wing media here the last couple of days. What I find most incredible, and I guess most ironic, are the people who for the last 30 years who have been telling us that you can't trust anything the government does. Can't trust government. Can't trust the politicians. They all lie. Government can't do anything right. They bungle everything. They're now telling us, trust the government. Trust Donald Trump, a proven liar and con man. Don't trust the scientists. Don't trust the people who have spent their life's work studying this stuff and have an understanding of what's going to happen. Don't trust intelligence. Stick with that machismo, stick with that hyper masculinity that I completely understand. I got why Donald Trump got in the SUV and exposed the Secret Service agents to his virus, because he was showing how strong he was. I get the fact that he left the hospital and I'm going to leave. I don't need you. I get that. I don't agree with it. I think it's kind of stupid, but I get it. I understand the mindset. I get tearing the mask off defiantly. But the message that sends to dimwit America is dangerous for the rest of us. Because the rest of us have to live with the consequences of what he does. The rest of us have to live with the consequences of every idiotic, irresponsible, stupid action he pulls off. Because there are people who are cheering him on. And, I've spent time, watching some of the videos of the line of people who were, cheering for him in the hospital. None of them wearing masks. All of them with this absolute cult-like, it's just this incredible cult-like attitude towards him, that he's the greatest. Oh, he loves everybody. I mean, it's really quite remarkable, and something I don't understand. There has never been a political leader that I have adored to that level. There's never been a political leader that I've agreed with to that level. I like Bernie Sanders. I agree with a lot of his policies. I easily can criticize him. I was okay with Barack Obama. Liked some of his policies. Can easily and did easily criticize him. But the kind of hero worship you see of Trump, beyond reproach and incapable of looking at this man and saying, boy, you really put the country in peril. You really have put the country in peril. No leader would deliberately get themselves sick and leave the country rudderless. No one would do that. And you didn't do it either. You didn't knowingly walk in and say, I'm going to get it. You were stupid, you were irresponsible, and you caught it. So the spin, nice try, not buying. But sadly, especially in my state of Pennsylvania, there are people who will easily buy it. And that, my friends, is scary stuff. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Going to take a quick break. Right back with David Pepper. He's the chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party. Right back. Stick around.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day civil rights leader Fannie Lou Hamer was born in Montgomery County, Mississippi. She was the youngest of 20 children. Her parents were sharecroppers, and she began working in the fields at the age of 6. By the age of 12, Fannie had to drop out of school to sharecrop to meet the needs of her family. Marrying in 1944, she and her husband continued to work as sharecroppers on a plantation near Ruleville. After decades of abject poverty and Southern political repression, Fannie Lou Hamer joined up with voter registration activists in 1962. When she and 17 others traveled to Indianola to register, Fannie was fired from her job and driven from the plantation she had worked at for decades. She began working with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and played a central role in organizing Freedom Summer. In a short time, Fannie was repeatedly arrested, beaten, and shot at for her activism. She suffered kidney damage after police beat her near to death in a Winona, Mississippi jail as she traveled home from a literacy workshop. By 1964, she helped to found the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which challenged the all-white delegation to the Democratic Convention. President Lyndon Johnson was so threatened by live testimony she was giving before the convention's Credential Committee that he organized an emergency press conference to preempt the broadcast. When the committee attempted a backroom deal to seat just 2 MFDP delegates with no voting rights, Hamer and other delegates left in disgust. Hamer continued her activism, but her life was tragically cut short in 1977 from hypertension and breast cancer. She was just 59. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to wonder if Stephen Farmer, the chairman of the Craighead County Republican Party in Arkansas, who died today from the coronavirus after, I guess, a little less than a month ago, they had a big event. They hosted a big event, maskless, of course, with other elected leaders. I got to wonder if he deliberately went in going, you know what, I'm going to get it because I'm a leader, because this is what leaders do. Because as Donald Trump said, and emphatically, nobody who's a leader would not do what I did, which I just find incredible. And here to share some thoughts on, well, whether an actual leader would deliberately get themselves sick. I've asked David Pepper to come talk with us. David is the chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party. David, thanks for taking time for us.
No problem. I hadn't heard that. That's terrible.
So you buying
all
this?
All around terrible. I can't believe it.
Are you buying this? That he didn't get it. It wasn't because he was irresponsible and stupid and overly willing to risk himself. It was because he wanted to. He stuck his face right in there and said, "Give it to me."
Well, if that's true, then he can tell us when he got his first positive test. There's nothing left to hide if that's all true.
And again, this is one of those moments where nothing that comes out of this administration is ever factually accurate. Nothing is ever true, and I guess this kind of misinformation we're used to over the last 3.5 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really, from crowd size to who knows what. Yeah, we're clear to the point where Americans just have no faith in what's coming out, whether it's Trump himself or that one crazy doctor he had, this new doctor. I mean, it never ends. But we're seeing now what a price we pay when you literally can't trust somebody. So, we all want a vaccine, but we have no idea if it's going to be something we can trust or take. I mean, until someone else is in charge, I don't think Americans are going to know which way is up.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing. I mean, Donald Trump, let's say he did get it. I'm questioning whether it was a false positive or not until we get more information. But let's say he did, and he got the miracle drug, which I'm told about $100,000 for the antibodies that he got that aren't available to many people. Obviously, not to Stephen Farmer, who died in Arkansas. To me, this shows the two Americas, the one for the very, very elite, and then the rest of us who are going to have to deal with this virus and not have access to a 6-room suite in a hotel, constant round the care, doctors at your beck and call, a helicopter right out your door, and all of the treatment you could possibly imagine without ever having to worry about its cost. I guess there's the two Americas.
Right. And what's incredible is Trump is in such a bubble, he doesn't even see that. So he stands up there, says everything's great, you don't have to worry. He has no clue that, he just benefited in a way from public health and special treatment that, the average American couldn't dream of getting.
Yeah, no.
So not only are there two Americas or worse, but he has no notion of that. And I actually think, and we'll see obviously in the coming days, but I think the entire episode, I think, is going to really have hurt him because, not only did all of his irresponsibility catch up to him, it's been so bizarrely non-transparent, and now his new approach is such a slap in the face to so many families who've dealt with this, whether people have died or been sick, and he's now saying, I got it, I'm tough, and all that. I mean, we can say this every week with this guy. I've never seen anything like it. It's just truly bizarre.
Now, the spin, obviously, very predictable. I mean, we predicted this. I predicted this on Friday. You knew this is the route they were going to take. If he walked out of the hospital on Monday, it was going to be, we're not closing anything. We're not doing anything. In fact, today, he said no more talk about a stimulus until after the election, which basically is saying, if you don't elect me, screw you, you're not getting anything. Which, holding the country hostage once again, which is why when, Joe Biden was, not too far from where I'm at in Gettysburg, he's like, look, the country's in a dangerous place. And we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really think that, again, politics in this era are so hard to predict, but any reasonable notion of politics, I can't think of a worse closing argument than everything he's doing. It's back to the coronavirus, which he's handled so poorly. This decision today to just cancel the negotiation, I mean, my guess is every senator, not only the ones who are in these closed states, but every one of them is appalled by that, because it's not only the wrong decision, it puts them in a terrible, terrible light. So I really, the politics don't seem to be something that anyone would embrace. We'll see.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you would think at some point that those Republican senators would say, "Hey, well, wait a second. We're talking about me here," and that you would have a faction of the Republicans standing up to the president saying, "This is crazy." I can't imagine the old boys club, who right now are we're seeing the virus rip through this administration because it got inside the bubble. I can't imagine a bunch of old white guys going, "Yeah, I want to be around this irresponsible guy." At some point, don't they have to go, "Hey, we got to stop this because it could be me dead"?
Right, you'd think so. They are so cowardly, and it never seems to end. But they also are, I think, politically starting to figure out they've got a problem. Like tonight, we're stuck in Ohio with one of the most cowardly senators. He never speaks out against Trump. But he tweeted, it was anemic, but for him, a little bolder, saying, "Hey, we really should try and get some kind of stimulus done because people need that to happen." I mean, that was his form of protest. But I actually think that was a sign that, wow, that the cancellation, not only are some of them probably worried about meeting with other people who might be, infected, but the cancellation of the conversation. They at least had before a game where it looked like they were trying to do something, even though they weren't.
Right.
But for Trump to just outright cancel negotiation, I think was a blunder politically that could really hurt, all the senators who are up right now.
Now, obviously Ohio is, one of the key states, one of the predictors of who wins the presidency for decades. How is this stuff playing there? I mean, I can't imagine, with that this response to this virus and him actually getting it is something that plays well with the average voter in Ohio. What are you seeing on the ground?
I mean, a combination here is the big narrative of Trump that our economy was good before COVID is nonsense. 2019 was the worst jobs year in Ohio since 2009. We lost construction, we lost manufacturing, farm bankruptcy spiked. The GM plant closed and those jobs went to Mexico. Trump blamed the union. Then he said it didn't matter. Now he's boycotting Goodyear. It's the economic story here is just not good for him. Now, so he can't run on that with any real support. And then we have the COVID crisis. We have healthcare concerns, and the ineptness just comes through. So there's not really, except for just being a dieharder, a loyal Republican, there's nothing he can really show Ohio he did. And a lot of the places that kind of gave him a chance that had some, let's say, disgruntled Democrats that didn't like Hillary Clinton and voted for him, they're the very parts of the state that have not done well economically. Where that GM plant closed, the Youngstown area. This is a place where Trump promised him the world. He's done nothing. So none of it's playing well. The fact that this crazy non-disclosed worry they had about COVID, and they walked into the debate without masks on, that was in Cleveland. So it's like every time he comes to Ohio, he brings problems, and now some of our elected officials are having to get tested. There were 11 cases that track back to the debate. People don't know who else might have gotten it up there. So he's just, he's been here a ton. He knows if he loses Ohio, he's finished. Not only is he done as president, but his plan to try and undo the outcome is over before it starts because our early vote is counted and announced first. So he's been here a ton, but he just has very little to show for it. So we're tied with 28 days to go, and Joe Biden is just getting started here. The first statewide TV started today. So I think Trump's campaign's in real trouble here. I think they know it.
No, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be. I mean, when I go back to visit family in Cleveland, and it's been a while since the virus, obviously, but I drive right past that Lordstown plant on 80 right in northeastern Ohio, and it's It's a ghost town. And I used to know people who worked in that plant. I used to work for a company that used to deliver into that plant. So those families were affected, and it's people that I know living here in Pennsylvania. And I can't imagine how you just go, not important.
No, and not only that, it was actually a comeback story. I mean, there was a lot of good things happening. After Biden, Obama, saved the auto industry. That plant was fully up, and people were excited about it. There were some other good things happening. Trump kind of came up with this, everything was bad when he ran, but the truth was it was a lot better than it had been. And then since he's been there, it's been even before the COVID crisis, this idea that we have to go back to whatever it wasn't working in Ohio. And so people were feeling better. And then but the GM story is so bad for Trump because he told folks here, don't sell your home. I'm going to bring it all back. When GM first said they were thinking of sending these jobs to Mexico, Trump did nothing. Then he literally he wouldn't respond to the UAW president, the local president who was saying, please help us. He never responded to anything. He did nothing. Then he actually started attacking the UAW leader. Then he blamed the workers. And then once the jobs moved, he literally at one point said it doesn't matter because they'd all come somewhere else, and they never did. So, I've rarely seen, or I can't remember seeing someone mishandle. The COVID crisis is maybe the better example, but he mishandled the shutting down of that plant. And as you would know, it wasn't just thousands of jobs in that plant that are gone. And a lot of the people just literally had to move to other states to keep work. It's all the other companies that relied on that plant. It's local taxes that relied on those workers and the jobs. So it's had a huge impact in that area around Ohio. And Trump, again, he didn't just not lift a finger. He actually insulted the workers like they were. He took GM's line and talked as if the workers were the problem and not GM's decision-making to send those jobs to Mexico. So that became a symbol, but the broader numbers in Ohio's economy are the same thing. Whether it's steel or other types of manufacturing, it's just been one bad thing after the next. And that's why, again, if you look at a poll, it's mixed on how they think Trump does economically, but that was his only re-election strategy, really, was I saved the economy. In Ohio, he just can't campaign on that here.
Right, and to be honest, had he handled the COVID thing right, had from the beginning he taken the advice that it was given and what he knew it was as dangerous as he knew it was and didn't diminish it and acted, quickly. And even if we had a really negative outcome, didn't have all the disinformation and all the shenanigans that he pulled, that could have saved him because the economy was turning, slightly downward to, at the beginning of it anyway. So we were heading for, a slowdown anyhow because we weren't getting the manufacturing jobs back.
Right.
We weren't rebuilding the economy. He was living off the coattails of what the Obama administration had built and the fact that they passed a massive stimulus that did a little bit. Not anywhere near what it should have and could have done, but a little bit to heat the economy up. And we were hitting the tail end of that. So he was almost saved by COVID.
In Ohio, it was already struggling. But, Americans, and it's generally a good instinct. We rally around our leaders if they do a good job. And as you saw around the country, the governors that stepped up, even if they made some mistakes, the governors who stepped up on COVID and showed real leadership, made tough decisions, listen to experts, Republican or Democrat, they actually skyrocketed in the polls. We had our governor. Now he's not doing as well lately, but he started out well. He's a Republican, but he relied on science and a health director who was impressive. Democrats loved it, and he was at 80% at one point because everyone rallied around him. Trump had that opportunity, but he just couldn't help himself.
Yep.
He's just got the most horrific instincts. Some criminal and corrupt, others inept, always sort of narcissistic, and you added it up, and in every single point of the crisis, he's made the wrong decision or frankly the worst decision, in some cases unthinkable decisions like what we've heard from Bob Woodward. And so, he actually could have, and I think the American people, we see it again and again, like after 9/11 with George Bush, they'll rally around leadership even if they don't agree on other things, but here he made that impossible because he he mishandled it and that's a nice word for what he did. No, he could have done something. He could have done something, and I think it could have been something that would have lifted him. And instead, I think it's one of the key sort of things that's gonna I'm assuming, cost him dearly in the coming month.
Especially after we heard the Woodward tapes, where what he did was a conscious decision. It wasn't out of just stupidity or arrogance. It was a conscious choice. The decisions that they made, the disinformation that they put out. We're here because of the choices they made right there at the beginning. But here's the thing: in the closing, days of this campaign, we're, now 28 days away from Election Day. Goldman Sachs today came out and said that a blue wave would be good for the economy and would upgrade their forecasts. That was Trump's. That was his ace in the hole. Is this where Biden has to pick this up and say, hey, we're going to rebuild this and maybe start talking infrastructure, maybe start talking some real solid economic, maybe be a little tough on China and the massive trade deficit we've got there. How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think I don't think we should be conducting trade policy by tweet and what Trump's done, but I clearly think in states like Ohio, you need to strike the balance of trying to expand our own trade, but also not allow manufacturers and workers here to get abused by other countries' policies. I think Joe Biden can do that. Sherrod Brown has been someone who's been willing to do that, and Ohioans like that. So I think that Joe Biden can take a page out of Sherrod Brown's playbook and strike that balance well. We even saw today with a massive trade deficit, what Trump's doing just isn't working. And in the closing weeks, I do think, to me, and again, one thing we all know is the stock market doesn't reflect, the average person's, how they're doing economically. But what I've always found amazing is, of course, a Joe Biden presidency would lift the economy. The pattern for 30 years has been the same. Right. Democrats get in there. They go with a bottoms-up economic plan that lifts the average person, who then spend more to lift everybody. And we have long-term growth. It was with Clinton. It was with Obama. Republicans get in. They do the trickle-down stuff. Nothing ever trickles down. It always ends quick. It's sort of a sugar high. Then it crashes. So for the life of me, I can never understand why, and that's why it was reassuring today. Of course we'll do better if Biden. This experiment has been tried multiple times. Yep. We've gone through this for 30 years. Trickle down never works, and bottoms up, investing, aiming at the middle class and lifting them through good jobs, good, collective bargaining, good health care. That's what works. We know it. Yep. We don't have to experiment anymore. And so, of course, to me, it's like, well, thanks, guys. I hope no one paid you that much for that analysis because we've literally seen this over and over and over again.
Yeah, we sure have.
It's getting really old, but we're going to have to do it again. We're going to have to pick up the pieces from another failed effort to trickle down, made far worse by this COVID disaster, and we're going to do it. But I'm confident that we can do it, just like we did it after, Bush tanked the economy going into 2008.
Good stuff. David, I appreciate the time, as always. Good stuff. Look forward to talking to you again.
Great.
Keep up the great work.
Awesome. Stay in touch. Take care.
Good stuff. David Pepper, chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1993. That was the day that President Bill Clinton signed into law reforms to the Hatch Act. The Hatch Act was passed in 1939. It limited the political activity of federal employees. The act was passed due to accusations of alleged political cronyism by Democrats on New Deal projects. Half a century later, Congress loosened the restrictions. In his speech before signing the reform, President Clinton explained the changes, saying, quote, "The Federal Employees Political Activities Act, which I am about to sign, will permit federal employees and postal workers on their own allowing time to manage campaigns, raise funds, and hold positions within political parties. Still, there will be some reasonable restrictions. They wouldn't be able to run for partisan political office themselves, for example. President Clinton described the importance of the changes, saying, quote, "We've been supporting democracy throughout the world, but here in our own country, millions of our own citizens have been denied one of the most basic democratic rights, the right to participate in the political process." He ended his remarks by saying, quote, "I look forward to the infusion and federal and postal employee energy, expertise, and dedication into our political system that this bill makes possible." Today, under the regulations of the Act, most employees can assist in voter registration drives, attend fundraisers, contribute money, and distribute campaign literature. They can even run for office in nonpartisan elections. They cannot, however, use their jobs to influence elections or engage in political activity while on the clock. Today, there remains a balancing act between protecting the free speech of federal employees and keeping the government politically neutral. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, again, you listen to David Pepper tell the stories in Ohio. In Pennsylvania, same thing. I mean, the reality is the manufacturing jobs haven't come back. I know people in West Virginia that the coal mining jobs that were promised aren't coming back. Our trade deficit, record high, all-time record high last month. So even with all the bluster, the chest thumping, we're going to take them on, he's actually made it worse. Now, look, I'll tell you, I'm very honest. I was in favor of tariffs. I'm in favor of taking on China and holding them accountable and stopping the currency manipulation. I don't really care about intellectual property theft. If you're stupid enough to go over there, you should get ripped off. But we should have a level playing field. And I was with him there. Problem is, he didn't do anything on that. And here to share some thoughts on what's going on around the country, I've asked Alex Morgan to come talk with us. He's executive director of the Progressive Turnout Project. Turnoutpac.org is their website. Alex, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So you hear this all the time from Trump and the Trumpkins that we've got the energy, we're enthused, we're ready to go take on and win this election, and yet I see just as much enthusiasm from the Biden folks.
It's interesting. We were out of town for a couple weeks, and I came back. I was one of the first people in my neighborhood to, order my Biden lawn sign shortly after Super Tuesday. We came back from being out of town for a couple weeks. My neighbor across the street has one. Either side of me has one. They're all over town. I think people, even though signs don't vote, I think people are overcompensating a little bit to make sure that people know that we are fired up and ready to get out there for Joe Biden this year. We're going to make up for 4 years ago.
Absolutely. I live in probably one of the reddest areas in the country, and I have never seen so many signs for a Democrat like I've seen for Joe Biden in the 15 years that I've lived here. I remember there being more Hillary for prison signs than Hillary signs here in 2016. So the fact that you've got a lot of people putting Biden signs out shows to me that there's an energy. Maybe it's not for getting Joe Biden as president as much as getting Donald Trump the hell out. But I don't care.
Yeah, and those are translating into, more importantly, setting the signs aside, the conversations that we need to be having. Those of us who are really excited about this election, to everybody who needs to hear about exactly how they should be going out to vote, with how COVID has absolutely changed the landscape for our elections this year. So getting back to our program, Progressive Turnout Project has always been focused on having in-depth, meaningful conversations with inconsistent Democratic voters. So this is not you and me who make sure we cast our vote in every single election. It's folks who have a little more spotty voting records, either because they're a little more disengaged or because maybe there are barriers that have been put up between them and casting their ballot in particular elections. And we're setting out to have 55 million phone calls by the time we reach Election Day on November 3rd across 20 different battleground states this year. So we are in all of the big ones, including Pennsylvania, and we're having a lot of really good conversations.
No, you're doing the work, and one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on is you're doing the work that should be done every election cycle, talking to those people who they're not me. They're not the super voters. They're not the people who never miss an election. Even if it's dog catcher, I get out and I vote for that. They're the folks who are, they're in and out, like you said, and maybe not as politically active. And I think that's what's really important: engaging those folks and having the real dialogue instead of going, checking down a call list, going, okay, like a survey taker. I think we have to get back to having actual honest conversations again about how do we want our government to work? What do we want from our government? What kind of an economy do we want? What kind of environment do we want? These are huge issues that I think we need more input on.
Yeah, and that is exactly why we started Progressive Turnout Project. We actually started in 2016, 4 years ago. We were a lot smaller. We only worked in 6 different congressional districts. But myself and Harry Paschal, who I started PTP with, we recognized on some of the campaigns that we had worked on that while we were spending a lot of time doing persuasion work, talking to independent voters who always vote, and a lot of time and attention was spent on what TV ads we're going to run and what does the direct mail look like, and what are we doing to make sure we're talking about our policy positions on these different pieces. We always looked and said the thing that was always going by the wayside and seemed like an afterthought were these important turnout conversations, the folks who can make or break an election just by showing up, because we know that 9 times out of 10, they're going to cast the ballot for our Democratic candidates. And that's exactly what we saw in key states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin 4 years ago, was that we came up just shy, 10,000 votes in Michigan, 30,000 votes in Wisconsin, right around 50,000 votes in Pennsylvania, of winning the White House. And what a difference it has made with 4 years of Donald Trump, who, as we were talking about with David Pepper earlier, made all these promises to working folks across the country and has failed to deliver on any of them. And on top of that, we actually find ourselves in the middle of multiple crises right now: a public health crisis, an economic crisis, a racial justice crisis. So we're focused on making sure we're closing the gap in all those key states, in addition to a whole bunch of Senate states, so that we make the difference on election day.
Now, this is one of those moments where you go back and you look at the numbers, and Trump obviously lost the popular vote by 3 million. We had, what was it, like 66 million to 63 million, but something like 100 million people didn't vote. And you go, you didn't even get the majority of the country, let alone the majority of the actual votes. In this moment in history, this is, for me, reaching out to those 100 million people who didn't vote, saying, look, if you're happy with the way all of this is going, because I know a lot of you are suffering like the rest of us, there's a way to get beyond that, and that's to register, make a plan to vote, and then execute that plan to cast your ballot and throw the bums out. To me, it is that simple.
You've probably seen that graphic on Facebook where it's like, if didn't vote was a candidate, it would have won, the last election. And so, that's exactly what we have to focus on. And those are, that's the universe that we're calling into. About a third of the people who we're calling are people who stayed home 4 years ago.
So with your organization, if people wanted to get involved, because I know you're making 55 million phone calls, sounds like an awful lot. I mean, I don't like being on the phone 5 minutes. And so good on the folks who are out there doing that. I'm sure you need bodies and people to help out.
Well, one thing that we have is we've got a staff of about 1,000 full-time people who are across the country in 17 of our battleground states. Right now, they are calling voters who have their absentee ballots to follow up and make sure that they send them back in. They're also making vote planning conversations to ask folks who haven't yet requested their ballot about, do you want to request a ballot? We're getting closer and closer to those deadlines. Or do you want to go and early vote if that's an option in your state? Or are you still planning to go on election day? And do you know about any changes that may have been taking place either in the courts or at your clerk's office that means there's going to be an adjustment to how you vote this year? So We are doing that around the clock. And then we also do have a large volunteer effort called Turnout 2020. It's not just us, it's a coalition effort of a number of other democratic and progressive organizations to get volunteers plugged in. And so if anyone is interested in helping on the phones between now and Election Day, we have trainings pretty much every day of the week, and people can sign up at turnout2020.org.
We'll make sure we get links out so folks take a look at that and maybe make a handful of the 55 million. You don't have to make all 55 million, right?
No, we think probably the volunteer piece, is maybe going to make a couple million of the 55 million. So we know that folks have their day jobs as well.
So you're out there, you're talking to all these people. They've got to be telling you something. What seem to be the top issues on folks' minds as you're talking to them? For me, I mean, honestly, I'll tell you right from the start, labor rights is my number one issue. And that's the main reason I think Trump has to go. We have never had a more anti-worker president than the guy we've got sitting in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now. But what are the people that you're talking to? What are they saying are their key issues?
Yeah. It's always interesting. You talk about the issue you care about most. I spent a few years as a teacher. Education is always the first thing that comes to mind from my perspective. But I don't think this is going to surprise anybody. We survey everybody who we speak with and have a full conversation with. We ask them about what's motivating them to vote. A lot of times the conversation starts by talking about, Trump. I mean, it doesn't matter, what the news of the day is. He's inserted himself in some way. But when we start probing and we ask them, well, what is it, about him that really bothers you? Or what has he done that bothers you, so that we can identify what issues folks really care about? They really doubled down, and 21% of folks so far have told us that corruption is their number one issue. They've really seen the corrosive impact of the Trump administration on government so much that it is gnawing at them every single day, that this is the number one thing that is motivating them to get to the polls. They see the corrosive influence that he and big money has had on our politics, and it goes beyond him, right? If we have a conversation in a Senate state, we inevitably get back to Mitch McConnell as well, right? In the last couple of years of the Obama administration, nothing was able to be accomplished through the Congress because you had folks like Mitch McConnell blocking every single thing that the president was trying to do. So they know it extends beyond Trump, and they're sick of it.
And the fact that he's got like 500 pieces of legislation that passed the House now sitting on his desk. Never mind way back then. There's all that legislation he refuses to move right now. I got to tell you, the kleptocracy seems to be, I'm surprised that it's the number one issue, because I would have thought during a time of pandemic, during a time of worry of getting sick, that healthcare would be up there. So I'm actually quite impressed that is the number one issue.
Well, and I think it's because it threads through everything else. Why do we see a lack of access to affordable healthcare, which is our second most talked about issue at 18%? It's because of the corrosive influence of big money and corporate interests. And Trump's corruption and incompetence is one of the big reasons why we can't get anything done on this pandemic. So I think it's up there because you see the impact it has on every other issue.
Yeah, it's one of these moments where you just go, there's so much, and I've had conversations with people go, you ask, what's the most important issue? And they go, you got an hour? It's kind of like there's a whole list. And, obviously corruption and the kleptocracy that we're living under right now, obviously up there, but I'm actually pretty surprised that that's the number one. Again, how can people help? I'm sure you need donations, that part of it.
So if folks want to learn more about us and our efforts and our story, they can go to turnoutpac.org. And if they're looking to get involved right away with our phone banking efforts, they can go to turnout2020.org.
Good stuff. Alex, I appreciate the time. Good stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me.
Thanks so much. Alex Morgan, Executive Director of the Progressive Turnout Project. You can check out their website, turnoutpac.org. We'll get links to how you can find all that. And really simply, and look, maybe you give them a hand. Maybe you throw it out there to where, you get involved. I hope folks do. But I appreciate the time, Alex. Real quick before we take a break, I gotta get this out. I gotta get this out before I got an email today from none other than former Governor Ed Rendell. Evidently, we're going to be heading into a bipartisan moment where Ed Rendell and newly going to be retired Senator Pat Toomey are joining together. And they're joining together for something really super serious. They're going to end the partisan gridlock, and they're going to push for term limits, congressional term limits. That's right, congressional term limits. They claim in the email that they sent me that our state is full of passionate people on both sides of the aisle, and that diversity, they say, of opinion is undoubtedly one of our strengths. He said, they write, but in these partisan times, it's easy to forget that Republicans and Democrats still have a lot of common ground. They say we share many of the same frustrations and hopes, and we all seek to solve problems through our government. They write, it's time. We believe the time has come for big structural changes in how Washington, D.C. does business. And their big structural change? Congressional term limits. They say more than any other change, more than anything we could do, term limits. That's going to be it. It's going to be how we restore trust in government and trust in the people who are our leaders, because they've lost that trust. They write, and it's one of those moments that I just go, they say we aren't alone in this feeling. A 2020 poll showed that 4 out of every 5 Pennsylvania voters, regardless of party, favors term limits on members of Congress. They say at the federal level, term limits, they believe, would help produce more profiles in courage. It would embolden members of Congress to cast votes based on conscience rather than maintaining incumbency. I'm not allowed to swear, but bull. Absolute total bull. It's always been a lie. It's always going to be a lie. We have the right to limit terms. It's called the vote. We have the ultimate term limiter, an educated, activated, engaged voting citizenry. You know what we could do to fix our problems, though? Seriously, if really you wanted to boil down and fix it, here's what you do. End corporate money into all political elections. Get rid of Citizens United. No more corporate personhood. No more buying. No more senator from Exxon. No more NASCAR jacket full of corporate owners. End that. Then we go to publicly financed elections. Everybody has the same money, even playing field. We don't make it about money anymore. We make it about ideas. So whoever can run the best campaign with the money that they've got and bring in the most volunteers, not corporate lackeys, they do well. We give them free airtime. Everyone gets an equal amount of free airtime to air their opinions, their thoughts, how they want to run their campaign, their visions. We gerrymander. We actually do gerrymander. We gerrymander districts so that they're competitive. We don't have 90% Democrats in one district and 90% Republicans in another. We don't create safe districts. Where we can, we gerrymander it towards 50-50 voter registration. So people actually have to fight for voters. There's a lot we could be doing. A lot we could be doing. This simple-minded, idiotic, not going to do it. So for me, big no on the term limits, because I want somebody who actually knows what the hell they're doing. And finally, I don't want somebody who in the last year of their term casts a vote that's going to get them their next job. And we know this happens time and time again in those places that have term limits. It's a horrible idea. It's exactly what corporate America wants. And it's bad. Quick break. Right back.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1996. 15,000 workers at the General Motors plant in Quebec walked off the job. Members of the Canadian Auto Workers Union were frustrated with their wages. They were also angry about layoffs and General Motors' move to outsource some of the auto production to non-unionized labor. One striker explained, GM doesn't want to have 30-year people anymore. They want temporary workers who they can pay lower wages. The Canadian Auto Workers had won an agreement with Chrysler that guaranteed the company would not sell off any Canadian parts plants. But GM refused to make a similar promise. During the strike, the union reported that General Motors' $39 billion profit last year was the largest single corporate profit ever recorded in Canadian history. The union argued that much of this profit came from underpaying Canadian workers. Canadians only accounted for 8% of the company's North American workforce, but they generated 42% of GM's total profit on the continent. Soon, GM workers at other Canadian plants joined the strike, which swelled to 26,000 workers. As the strike wore on, its impact was felt beyond the Canadian borders. Thousands of GM workers in the United States were temporarily laid off. The parts they built were not needed because of the strike in Canada. It is estimated that 90,000 cars were not produced because of the strike. Finally, after nearly 3 weeks, the union and the company reached an agreement. The workers won a 2% annual raise in addition to their cost of living increase, but they also agreed that GM could sell off 2 of its plants and allow GM the right to do more outsourcing of parts from outside suppliers. And for that, the workers at those plants were guaranteed their wage level for 3 years. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
How nasty is the Republican Party's massive campaign to thwart democracy? Ask the good people of Florida. This was one of only 3 states that permanently took away the voting rights of felons who had completed their punishment. In 2018, though, a whopping 65% of Floridians voted for a state constitutional amendment that finally struck this malicious bit of legal ugliness from the books, thus restoring the political personhood of about 1 million people who had served their time. But, led by Ron DeSantis, Florida's right-wing goose of a governor, the GOP demanded that an appeals court of hyper-partisan federal judges overrule 2018's landmark vote by the people and slam the door once more on the rights of discharged felons. They're not entitled to vote, squawked these vindictive ballot suppressors, unless and until they've paid off the full amount of court costs and fees they were assessed. Money, asserted Republican leaders, must trump social justice, human decency, and political rights for those mostly indigent people who are unable to pony up $1,000 or so to vote. Even if ex-felons are regularly making payments to clear the debt, tough luck, say the Republican repressors, no vote until every penny is paid. It's a flagrant case of rigging the system to steal the votes of a low-income constituency generally inclined to support Democratic policies and candidates. It also amounts to an unconstitutional poll tax, made more intolerable by applying it to one class of citizens, largely people of color, specifically to disenfranchise them. This is Jim Hightower saying the court's 6-judge Republican majority, 5 appointed by Trump, cynically defied the U.S. Constitution and the Florida electorate. Yet, the people's battle for justice goes on. To stay connected, go to FloridaRRC.com.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I gotta tell you, I'm still stuck on the admission today that Donald Trump got it on purpose. He did this for us. He got the virus on purpose because it's what any leader would do. It's exactly what any leader would do. Because for us, he's going to take on the virus. Now, as I said from the beginning, the reality is not all of us have access to the kind of care that he got. 24-hour around-the-clock, multiple doctors at his beck and call, a 6-room suite at a hospital, the antigens that, I don't even know what they're called, but like $100,000 a pop that we're never going to get access to. There's kind of a difference in care. And for me, one of the things that I think right now highlights is just how vulnerable we, the working class of this country, are when it comes to health care, especially since the Trump administration's in court as we speak, attempting to take away health care from so many people, which is why I think it's right now is the perfect time to talk to my next guest. She's written the book, Marching Towards Coverage, How Women Can Lead the Fight for Universal Health Care, written by Rosemary Day. Rosemary, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi, thanks. Glad to be here.
So, I look at this and we're really in an interesting moment because, simultaneously, while we watch a president get the best health care the world can possibly provide, you're literally in the process of ripping the last vestige of health care away from people who haven't had it for such a long time. It just seems like the To America frame has never been more crystal clear than it is at this moment.
I'd have to totally agree with you. And it's late at night for me, and I just have to say it is outrageous, completely outrageous. Inequality has grown in this country, and this absolutely epitomizes it.
Now, the sad reality is Amy Coney Barrett is going to get seated on the Supreme Court. I don't see any way of stopping that. She is going to be the fifth vote that's going to decide the ACA goes by the wayside. And millions of people lose their health insurance, and there's healthcare chaos in this country. But I'm one of those people who says out of chaos can come something pretty good. And this is where I think your book is so important in laying the groundwork of how do we pick up the pieces and how do we go forward. So the question is, how do we do that?
Well, I really think healthcare should be a humanitarian issue, not some polarized political issue. And that's really what I wrote my book to put forward what I saw as a pragmatic way to get to universal health care in this country, a way that could work for America if we could set aside some of the really awful rhetoric and kind of take it through, some paths that other countries have done, not England, not Canada, because they're not analogous to us in terms of some of the things that we hold dear, but I provide some other examples of ways that we could get there and truly make healthcare a right for everyone in this country.
Yeah, I've said from the beginning, I think for any healthcare plan, any health insurance plan has to be cradle to grave. We have to take the perverse incentives out that are in there right now that we have with the employer based plan that we have now. Look, I've got probably healthcare second only to Donald Trump. I have really good union health care. My union negotiates. I pay dearly for it. In fact, when I had my hip replaced at the beginning of the year, it literally cost me $110. So I'm willing to say, you know what? I'm willing to give that up so that we get care for everyone. Now, you've got a lot of people who are saying, but I don't want something that's going to be absolutely horrible, because we're sold with this idea, Rosemary, that we're going to end up with rationed care. We're not going to get the care that we need, and that those others are going to come in front of us. How do we allay those fears?
So the thing is, we already do have rationed care. We've rationed it based on who happens to have the brass ring and has access to employer-sponsored coverage. And you've got the gold ring. It sounds like from the union benefits. A lot of folks who have coverage through their employers are starting to find it to not be the coverage that it once was, and so they're suffering. But then we still have all of these people uninsured in our country. It was 30 million before the pandemic, and the number is going to grow by leaps and bounds because of the pandemic. And all this job loss, that means that people also are losing their health insurance. That doesn't happen in other countries. You lose a job, but you don't lose your health coverage. So we need to start to give people options, as we did with the Affordable Care Act, give them options outside of what an employer can offer, because employers are struggling. They are struggling to try and make it all work. And we as a society are wealthy enough to make it work. We need to shift the emphasis to there.
Well, I mean, not only are we wealthy enough, we're already paying for universal coverage. We're just siphoning off a huge part of it to investors and to very wealthy people, and we're spending money for care that we're definitely not getting.
There's definitely some truth to that. There's no question. And I go back to the point about inequality. The system has really started to be stacked against the regular working folks, and that's regular working folks of all races, but honestly, disproportionately people of color, and that's something I really just want to bring the spotlight to.
So, but here's the thing. Now you've hit on the issue, and I have friends who believe we cannot have a universal health care plan, even if you offered the benefits that I have to everyone, which I think is possible. I pay about $20,000 a year for the health care that I get through our contract. And, the ACA plans weren't that much cheaper, to be honest, with all of the subsidies that were going to it. So for me, we're already paying for Cadillac health care for everyone. We're just not getting it. But the reason that we don't want to expand it, it seems to me, and I could be wrong, I hope I am, but it is that race issue. It's we don't want the others to get it. We don't want those people to have something.
It's really unfortunate, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. And if you by way of example, we can look at the states that still have not expanded their Medicaid program in this country, and that was something that was funded by the Affordable Care Act, but then it ended up being left to states to do. And there's about a dozen states that have not increased the levels of support through Medicaid. Those states are largely in the South and a few in the Midwest, but that's starting to shift through ballot initiatives and the will of the people. But in the South, and particularly the most populous states of Texas and Florida, they have not made that change. And, I really do believe there's a race issue tied up in there.
But isn't this where the feds could, have a public option to where you could, and I'm a supporter of Medicare for all. I'm a supporter of, fixing a price to it. Let me buy Medicare. Let's make Medicare better. Let's open it up to younger people so that we can make it solvent for longer, get healthier people into it so that we're not picking up the tab. Because as we know, people use healthcare in the first 5 years and the last 5 years of life. That's the majority of the time they use it. And surprise, surprise, we have Medicaid that covers the first 5 years because more than half of the kids in this country are born on Medicaid. And virtually everybody in their last 5 years is on Medicare. So we've taken the costs out of the system and we've given private industry the most profitable people possible. I mean, it seems stupid to me. I wish someone would let me set up a business where I only get the really profitable people and all of the costly folks, they go away.
Well, I'm sure some insurers would disagree with you on that, although, insurers in this crazy year of coronavirus have not been having to pay out as many claims as they typically do. So they have built up some, let's just say, some healthy reserves for sure.
Yeah, I mean they've got billions of dollars in reserves, as they should. I'm not saying they shouldn't, help themselves and not be, risk, in deep trouble. But at the end of this, it just seems to me we're already paying for coverage that we should be getting. So you write the book and you say how women can lead this because we men have kind of boogered this up so far. And I've been saying for years, I can't wait for women to take over. I can't wait for a women-led Senate and a women-led House and women to be in the White House. I can't wait because you guys, you can't do any worse. The bar isn't really high.
I love it. So I absolutely think that we need to certainly get closer to equality. How about equality? In terms of our representation, women are only 24% of Congress. We've never held the vice presidency or the presidency, as you know, and we're the minority of governors in this country. So, and yet women have the preponderance of caregiving responsibilities. Things have not completely evened out, and with that, in a pandemic, it's just become incredibly high pressure to manage all of these things. And one of those pieces that's really solvable would be to get to universal health care. That shouldn't be something that women are having to worry about on top of everything else. And so I say, hey, women are going to need to make the personal political, the way the feminists talked about that in the 60s and 70s. The personal is political, and those pressures you feel on the home front can't be solved by you individually. They have to be solved collectively, and we need to, step up and push for more and just say enough is enough. This society needs to make health care a right.
Oh my God. Oh my God. You said the C word, the dreaded C word. Oh my God. The dreaded C word, collective. Oh my God. Socialism. Oh my God.
Oh, well. I'm going to go back to saying this is humanitarian, and my goodness, in a pandemic where our health is so intertwined, we absolutely should be seeing this. We absolutely should be seeing this with even more clarity than usual. So again, because women are saddled with the care, I say, okay, it's time to have some power in this situation so that our societal resources help us out and we spend them on the right things, not the wrong things.
But what do you say to the person that says, Rosemary, this is socialism. We can't have socialism. Universal health care, that thing that Hillary Clinton wanted back in the 90s, we can't possibly have socialism. Socialism's bad. We've been trained like Pavlovian dogs, don't you know?
Right. And so that's another reason why I wrote the book, because I want to get beyond this sort of simplistic labeling that basically stops the conversation. Right. America is not going to be a socialist country, but there are ways to manage our capitalism. We're not going to give up our capitalism. And, frankly, a lot of European countries haven't either. But what they allow is for some more government involvement to set guardrails on the capitalism, which is exactly what we did with the Affordable Care Act. We kept the private insurers, but we made sure that they had to all play by the same rules, cover everyone with pre-existing conditions, those kinds of rules. And that just makes things more fair. That's what we need to do. That's not socialism. That's regulated marketplaces.
No, and we ensured that they made profits, and that that's good for the capitalists. And we
and
also
if they
ensured
made
that
too much, they had to give it back. They will be giving money back.
Exactly. I was going there.
Okay.
we capped it. It was 85. They had to spend 85 cents of every dollar on actual health care, so they could keep 15 of it. So we did that, but they still were guaranteed, and we got reasonable coverage. I mean, it wasn't great. They were high deductible. We should be working on that. And had we worked on that the last 10 years, 10, 12 years now, or 10 years now, had the Republicans not at every step of the way thrown an absolute temper tantrum and screamed repeal and replace with nothing, we might have gotten something pretty good. We may have followed the Medicare path where it was crap at the beginning. And now if you threaten to take it from Granny, she's going to beat you with her walker. Maybe we would have gotten there.
It boggles my mind some days. It really does. It's just, especially because we started this in Massachusetts. I know Massachusetts is a blue state, but we had a Republican governor, one Mitt Romney, who led the charge on getting us our version of health reform, which became the prototype for the Affordable Care Act. It was done based on a lot of conservative principles and done in a bipartisan fashion.
Yeah.
And, we had tremendous success. We got down to 2% uninsured. That's almost universal coverage with that model. We did not have to go to socialism.
Yeah, and, to be honest, it was the Conservative Heritage Foundation's answer to Hillary Care. It was what conservatives used to believe in. All that personal responsibility stuff they used to talk about back in the 90s that we evidently don't believe in anymore.
I don't know what we.
That is the right response coming from that socialist haven of Massachusetts, where they've got near universal coverage using the conservative plan. The book, Marching Towards Coverage, How Women Can Lead the Fight for Universal Health Care, written by Rosemary Day. We'll get links out on how you can take a look at it. Last bit, I got to ask you. We got to get this done. I mean, the sad reality is, and all joking aside, in this moment of pandemic, this is the issue of our time. And we're heading towards a massive crisis when Amy Coney Barrett throws the deciding vote to chuck the ACA. What organizing is being done around this, do you think? And hopefully, what does your book play in that organizing?
Well, so I encourage people to express themselves, obviously through voting, but before the election, there's actually going to be another whole women's march, and my book was inspired by the first women's march in Washington D.C. and all around the country and world, in fact, in 2017. That was the largest, single day protest we'd ever had in our country, completely peaceful and so powerful. Yeah. And we're going to have another one on October 17th around the country to protest what's happening with this Senate railroading of Amy Coney Barrett. So, it's a chance for people to rise up again prior to the election. And then, of course, it's important. I mean, it is absolutely imperative, is the word I'm looking for people to vote for a health care ticket. And it's a very stark contrast in this election, no question about it.
There you go. Again, the book Marching Towards Coverage, How Women Can Lead the Fight for Universal Health Care, written by Rosemary Day. We'll get links out on how you can check that out. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Great talking with you.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Take care.
Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day civil rights leader Fannie Lou Hamer was born in Montgomery County, Mississippi. She was the youngest of 20 children. Her parents were sharecroppers, and she began working in the fields at the age of 6. By the age of 12, Fannie had to drop out of school to sharecrop to meet the needs of her family. Marrying in 1944, she and her husband continued to work as sharecroppers on a plantation near Ruleville. After decades of abject poverty and Southern political repression, Fannie Lou Hamer joined up with voter registration activists in 1962. When she and 17 others traveled to Indianola to register, Fannie was fired from her job and driven from the plantation she had worked at for decades. She began working with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and played a central role in organizing Freedom Summer. In a short time, Fannie was repeatedly arrested, beaten, and shot at for her activism. She suffered kidney damage after police beat her near to death in a Winona, Mississippi jail as she traveled home from a literacy workshop. By 1964, she helped to found the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which challenged the all-white delegation to the Democratic Convention. President Lyndon Johnson was so threatened by live testimony she was giving before the convention's Credential Committee that he organized an emergency press conference to preempt the broadcast. When the committee attempted a backroom deal to seat just 2 MFDP delegates with no voting rights, Hamer and other delegates left in disgust. Hamer continued her activism, but her life was tragically cut short in 1977 from hypertension and breast cancer. She was just 59. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, the reality is Amy Coney Barrett is going to be the 5th deciding vote. I think it's going to be a 5-4 decision with John Roberts going with the quote-unquote liberal justices, and the Affordable Care Act will be gone. And we will end up in a scenario where millions of people are going to lose their health care, and people are going to die from it. Now this from the hyper-religious Amy Coney Barrett, and what we're finding out, and look, I'm not attacking someone for their religion. I think she's too extreme to be on the court, to be honest. We now find out that while she was a law student, she was living in the in the home of one of the founders of the People of Praise, which is one of these, they call it a secretive Christian group. They're one of these groups that are criticized quite often for being almost cult-like, for dominating the lives of the people that are part of their group, subjugating women. It's very much old school. Man's the head of the household, and women know her place, and I would argue kind of extreme. And I don't, and I know she has said that it's not her place to bring religion. She's not, her religious beliefs aren't going to bear on her discharging her duties as judge. I don't buy it. I don't buy it even a little bit. But we now find out that not only she was living with this one of the founders of this People of Praise group, but her husband as well. Evidently, he got a speeding ticket, and it was addressed to that home. So, kind of weird. But so, if religion your thing, I mean, if you're afraid of the theocracy, that's an important part of this. Now, for me, while I'm afraid of that because it's scary to me, the fact that she's a corporatist is even more frightening. The fact that she's even worse than the Roberts courts, the Roberts court and her decisions. And we've talked about this before. The Roberts court, since Roberts been on the Supreme Court, more than 70% of cases that the Chamber of Commerce is involved in that goes before the court are decided for the Chamber of Commerce. So, more than 70%. Now, that exact number, according to the watchdog group Accountable for Us, they found that in the 55 cases that they looked at where citizens took on corporations, 76% of the time she sided with corporations. That's even worse. That's even more extreme than the Roberts court. And I said, look, the Supreme Court is right now bought and paid for by corporate America. They've done it by keeping us stupid on these social issues. If you don't want abortion to happen, maybe make people want to bring children into this world. Have a social safety net that when people bring children into the world, they know they're going to be fed and clothed and a roof over their head. And they're going to have opportunity of education and healthcare. Maybe we do that first to encourage people to want to have those children, even though it's going to be a struggle. But even beyond those social issues, because we know, just the other day you had, or just yesterday, you had Thomas and I think it was Alito, who are basically calling for a case to undo same-sex marriage. So we're going to relitigate that and overturn a previous decision, overturn decided law, and the idea of stare decisis. So nothing is ever going to be decided as long as the corporatists and the zealots are running our court. And as I said, the religious social issues are one thing. For me, it's the corporate side. It's the fact that there's so much money to be in this, so much power to be in this. It's frightening and it's scary. Now, as I've said, for me, the scary part is she's anti-union. She has in her rulings, gone after unions. Our Supreme Court has already done what they can do to limit unions' political power. They've done what they can do to quash bargaining rights. There are numerous cases out there to stop collective, class action lawsuits for consumers, for workers. We can go through all of that if we have to, but it's what they've done. They've strengthened the death grip on our country for the fossil fuel industries. Big money. Citizens United. Basically ensconced corporate power in our political process forever now, because it's the one who can generate the big bucks, and Barrett's right in line with that. And for me, that's what's most scary about her. All of the other things, yeah, the religious craziness, yeah, I get it. It's the corporate stuff. That pendulum that I keep talking about of power between capital and labor. In the war that is capital versus labor. the pendulum swinging more to the side of capital, more to the side of wealthy special interests, more to the side of the haves, and further away from the working class and the consumer class and the have-nots, the others. We're going to see attacks on civil rights, on human rights, on women's rights, on workers' rights, on consumer rights. You're going to continue to see more of that. And it's going to accelerate because now they've got the court. All those cases that they didn't bother bringing because Roberts was a little squishy on, they don't have to worry about. It's all full tilt boogie, pedal to the metal. Scary times, my friends. Scary times. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
Has been strengthening at a pretty robust rate.
Buckle up, Gulf Coast. Hurricane Delta is already a record breaker.
It's a disastrous new normal. Catastrophic fires, once contained to one season, now a harrowing year-round battle.
Grim milestone in California's historic disastrous fire season. Poland says it will phase out coal. Plus, Airbus debuts zero-emission passenger airplanes.
Really?
Yeah.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Since 1930, 5 of the biggest fires out of the top 10 have been this year.
California is America fast forward. It's a postcard from the future.
Oh man, are you serious? California is basically a postcard from the future? That means the future is also on fire?
Yep. Sorry, Trevor.
And it also means that the post office is still functioning in the future, so I guess, woo, we did it.
Okay, Desi Doyen, we've run through all the names in the alphabet for the storms, so now we're on to the Greek letters. I'm hoping there is not very many more because I know Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, and I think I know Epsilon, but after that, I'm completely out.
Me too. But yes, Hurricane Delta has formed in the Caribbean and is on track to impact the central Gulf Coast of the United States. Delta is the earliest 25th named storm ever recorded in this historic 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. We're now into the Greek alphabet for storm names for only the second time on record. Delta formed more than a month earlier than the previous record 25th storm. That was back in 2005. The National Hurricane Center forecasts that Delta will rapidly intensify due to very warm ocean waters and has issued storm surge warnings from Texas to Florida. Delta could slam into beleaguered, storm-weary Louisiana, and if Delta makes landfall, it would be the first ever Greek-named storm to hit the United States. And it would be the 10th tropical storm to make landfall on the mainland U.S. this season, breaking the 1916 record of just 9 landfalling storms.
And we still got about a month to go in the storm season?
Actually, about 2 months.
Oh, boy.
A grim milestone in California.
So far this year, California has seen more than 8,000 wildfires, destroying more than 7,000 buildings.
The state's historic 2020 wildfire season, which shows no signs of slowing down, has now burned more than 4 million acres. That's more than 6,000 square miles, and it is more than double the state's previous record year. The 5 largest wildfires in California history have all hit this year and have killed more than 31 people in California and caused hundreds of billions of dollars in damages and economic losses.
And they tell us we can't afford to do anything about climate change.
In other news, a federal judge in Montana has ordered the removal of Trump's controversial acting director of the Bureau of Land Management, William Pendley. The judge ruled Pendley has been serving unlawfully for more than a year because he did not get Senate confirmation. Pendley advocates privatizing all of the public's lands, so of course course, Trump tried to put him in charge of the public's lands.
Is that the Law and Order president?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The court ruling could unravel some of Pendley's decisions. Oh, but don't worry, he's still there working in his old job.
Of course he is. Law and Order.
And also at the Interior Department, after stalling for months, a top Trump Interior official finally released a scientific study confirming the impact of oil development on federally protected polar bear populations in Alaska. The study shows that endangered polar bears are already being harmed by the loss of sea ice due to man-made climate change, but that climate change will open up more areas for oil extraction, which the study notes will also further harm polar bears. The study may slow down new oil exploration in parts of Alaska. In the coal industry, Robert E. Murray, the 80-year-old former CEO and president of bankrupt Murray Energy Coal Mining Company, who for years attacked federal mine safety regulations aimed at reducing terminal black lung disease among coal miners, and who disputed the health care claims of coal miners seeking treatment for black lung disease, has himself filed for black lung benefits.
Well, it's karma, but it's hard to be happy about that one.
But some good news.
Good.
Poland has signed an agreement with its coal mining unions to phase out coal entirely by 2050. Now, climate scientists say 2050 is too late, but policy experts say that the unions agreeing to an end date for the liquidation of Poland's coal mining industry is a huge development. The first time that Poland has put a timeline on ending coal, which accounts for about 75% of the country's electricity generation.
Really? I'll tell you. I always forget about Poland.
Finally, European airplane manufacturer Airbus has unveiled 3 new concepts for zero-emissions passenger planes that it hopes to launch for commercial use by 2035. The V-shaped Zero E's jet engine would use hydrogen as the primary fuel instead of kerosene, with onboard batteries to run it as a hybrid electric propulsion system.
Will it stay in the sky?
Yes!
It's witchcraft, I tell you. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
There's a pretty amazing story over at Bloomberg. And again, it's one of these moments where we're in really desperate times. The sad reality is with Trump walking away from any deal for the stimulus, now you're going to have, even more families up against the wall. In Florida, you had the beginning of the month, people who were, tough. No more moratorium. You're out of luck. Sorry, buddy, you're out of luck. Time for you and the kids to find a bridge in a cardboard box. And, you may remember the other day we spoke with Billy Ray, the guy who wrote and directed the Comey Rule. And, Jeff Daniels, if you haven't seen it, absolutely well worth the 3.5 hours of watching. It was fantastic and historically, in my view, absolutely accurate. But it got me, thinking about Jeff Daniels, who I like as an actor, and I happened to search him on, I think it was on either Netflix or the Amazon, and it came up with a movie Jeff Daniels had done back probably 30 years ago. He was a young guy, and it was like one of those after school movies, made for TV movies, where the storyline went, this was a guy who, a small family, they were just, a young family, had a kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, a small, 4 or 5-year-old girl. And, he's trying to work. He's working 2 jobs. The wife's working. They're struggling to make ends meet. And, he's got his, he's going to school. He's going to be, an electrician. He's going to get his degree. Life's going to be good. They've got all these plans in front of them. And their house burns down. Their apartment building burns down. They lose everything. His tools, everything. And it goes through this process of, trying to find work, trying to find a place to live, trying to find clothing, trying to exist in this, new world of you've lost everything and there's no one to help you. You're basically on your own. And the help that is there is horrible. They end up having to go to this, halfway kind of hotel residence where it's, it's just, it's a terrible place in a dangerous, violent neighborhood because of the poverty that's around there. And, it just highlighted all of these societal problems. And, this is going back into the 80s. And you go, things haven't changed. We haven't, as a matter of as a country, in my view, done the things that we should have been doing all along to make the hard downs softer. Or someone like Pat Toomey in 2009 wanted to see the economy collapse even more. More people lose their health care. More people lose their jobs. More people lose their savings. More people out in the streets. I was saying, how do we stop that? 2009, 2010, I'm going, how do we make sure that when the next this happens, when the next massive job loss happens, that people don't get detached from the workplace, that they don't lose their insurance, that they don't lose their benefits, that they don't lose their self-worth. And this little movie, it stuck with me because, and we don't make these anymore. I mean, I go back to the 80s because I was a kid of the 80s. These were frequently on TV. The struggles of working people were frequently there so that you identified with it. Now what do we see? All we see is glitz and glamour. We see some dimwit who looks goofy on YouTube standing on his head, blowing bubbles out his nose, and he lives in a mansion. And we think that's great. But that schlub who's swinging the hammer, who had one hiccup, one illness, one bump in the road, they lose everything, and there's nothing there for them. And it's one of those things that just is so infuriating. And there was an article over at Bloomberg today, and it was one of those things where you go, yeah, absolutely, we're in just this weird world. And the reason I looked at it is my hometown. The headline is 2 Cleveland houses tell a story of America's unequal recovery. And, they look at a house on the east side of Cleveland in a predominantly African-American neighborhood, in a neighborhood with high poverty, high crime rates, not a lot of opportunity, not a lot of jobs. And they compare it to, a similar sized house in Lakewood, which is a predominantly white suburb, very affluent. And, they say, this house, there's a renter who got evicted, who had to leave because they lost their job. And this one, someone just bought for like $350,000. And it's, they're the same age, virtually, but completely different condition. And, they use this as the juxtaposition of what happened to communities across the city. You're 20 minutes away from one to the other, but they're completely different worlds. And as I was saying back in 2009, you can't have happen again what we saw in places like Cleveland, in places like Detroit, in places like Milwaukee, where entire poverty-ridden communities were abandoned, and those houses, then became mold infested and gutted for copper and all kinds of horrible stuff, and inhabitable. And where did those people go? They went to the streets. And our social services, our safety net hasn't been there. And this is, I go back to this movie where, all it would take is, one little bit of help. All it would take was a little bit of dignity, a little bit of hand up to give people some self-respect. Now, ultimately, at the end, they did come. The family came back together, and there was a happy ending. But that's not real life. Real life is struggle. And when I look at someone like Amy Coney Barrett, who's the epitome of privilege, sitting on the Supreme Court and making the decisions that we know are going to come, that are going to hurt those families. Going to take health care away from people in the moment that they need it desperately. I'm beyond infuriated. Now, look, I've said from the beginning, and I'll say till the day I go, I'm a working class person. I believe in the value of work. I believe every person should work. I believe they have to work. I also believe if the private sector can't or won't create enough jobs, the public sector has to. The old adage, if you want to eat, you got to work. I firmly believe that. But there have to be jobs available. There have to be jobs that give people dignity and give them the ability to make a decent living. And that's the safety net we need. I'm not 100% against the idea of universal basic income. I think it's a good supplement. I think, if you're going to have a crappy minimum wage of $7.25 an hour that's been stagnant for more than a decade, you got to supplement it somehow. Absolutely in support. But the idea that we're going to have a society of people who don't work, I'm not going to go with that, because I firmly believe there's a therapeutic quality to it. There's self-respect and dignity. And I look at these communities. And this article, about these two houses in Cleveland, the neighborhood, I've been through both of these neighborhoods. And there's so much work to be done. People say, well, what are you going to do? There isn't enough work you're going to take work from the private sector. No, there's so much work that needs to be done that nobody wants to do, that nobody's going to do, that only the public sector can do. You go, well, we're not all carpenters. Yeah, but we can scrape, we can paint, we can fix certain things. We can do stuff. We can train people to do stuff. And we can rebuild these communities, and we can make them vibrant again. We can infuse them with I don't know, a little bit of wealth, so that people have pride of ownership. The difference between the two communities, the house in Lakewood that sold for $350,000 and the house on the other 20 minutes away that's probably worth $15,000. The difference is that person in Lakewood owned that house. That house has never seen the likes of a renter. The pride of ownership of that house, those people, and they took care of it. I guarantee the other house, one poverty-stricken renter after another, struggling to pay the rent to keep up, and a landlord on the other side of it looking to turn a profit, looking to pay for his expensive house on the other side of town. I say we take these houses, we give them to people, we help them fix them up, and that becomes their stability, their wealth building. There's so much we could be doing, but we're not going to. Because we got people who are sitting in our halls of power who've probably never been through those neighborhoods. And those neighborhoods are the butt of every joke. It's so incredibly frustrating. Because look, Republicans do masterfully. They play the 51% game. They want the working class to look at folks who are below them with disdain. They're lazy, they're shiftless, criminals, drug addicts, worthless, until it becomes them. And sadly, these moments of economic crisis, make us all take a second look at where we are. All it takes is one like this Jeff Daniels movie, one thing. And it may not even be something as big as your apartment building burning down while not having insurance. Could be that moment where you didn't have health insurance thanks to Amy Coney Barrett taking it away. And your kid fall off their bike and break an arm. And that's enough to send the entire family into economic chaos. Think about that. For me, we're in this together. And for those people who say, well, the heck with them, I have my employer-sponsored health care, I'm okay. For now, until you lose that job. And then that health care, like the health care that I have, that is really second to none. The second I stop working, the second I lose that care. That's wrong. Flat wrong. Love to hear your opinion, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1993. That was the day that President Bill Clinton signed into law reforms to the Hatch Act. The Hatch Act was passed in 1939. It limited the political activity of federal employees. The act was passed due to accusations of alleged political cronyism by Democrats on New Deal projects. Half a century later, Congress loosened the restrictions. In his speech before signing the reform, President Clinton explained the changes, saying, quote, "The Federal Employees Political Activities Act, which I am about to sign, will permit federal employees and postal workers on their own time to manage campaigns, raise funds, and hold positions within political parties. Still, there will be some reasonable restrictions. They wouldn't be able to run for partisan political office themselves, for example." President Clinton described the importance of the changes, saying, quote, "We've been supporting democracy throughout the world, but here in our own country, millions of our own citizens have been denied one of the most basic democratic rights, the right to participate in the political process." He ended his remarks by saying, quote, "I look forward to the infusion and federal and postal employee energy, expertise, and dedication into our political system that this bill makes possible." Today, under the regulations of the Act, most employees can assist in voter registration drives, attend fundraisers, contribute money, and distribute campaign literature. They can even run for office in nonpartisan elections. They cannot, however, use their jobs to influence elections or engage in political activity while on the clock. Today, there remains a balancing act between protecting the free speech of federal employees and keeping the government politically neutral. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently our vice president has a sincerely held religious belief that plexiglass was created by the devil. Evidently sincerely held belief that by allowing the plastic demon sheets to be anywhere near him, that it'll capture his manly oral seed. And evidently, the devil will be able to clone it with the help of aborted fetuses. Evidently, this is the vice president's sincerely held belief. No, I actually made that up. But it's close. Evidently, he's balking at the fact that there's going to be plexiglass separating the vice presidential candidates in the big debate tomorrow. He doesn't want plexiglass between them, and I don't know why. This is one of those things where you go, I don't get it. I don't get the statement from his chief of staff was, if Kamala Harris wants it, she's more than welcome to surround herself with plexiglass if it makes her feel more comfortable. His chief of staff, Pence's chief of staff, said it's not needed. They believe that it's not medically necessary to partition themselves away from each other, given the fact that Pence has been around the super spreader president and all of the people in the administration. We now find Stephen Miller, one of Trump's aides, one of his Nazi aides, has contracted the virus. And every day we're going to keep hearing more and more of this, of the people that we have to know. I'm sure there are numerous other people who have contracted it that we're not going to know their names until one of them dies. This doesn't become real until one of them dies. And you know, unfortunately, I think it's going to be Chris Christie he's the guy in the worst shape. And even then, they wouldn't care. And what's interesting to me is even Christie is defending Trump. Even Christie, well, we're just going to go to the hospital. Abundance of caution. If it were me, yeah, that's a whole different thing. But like I said, evidently the plexiglass is the devil. Now we're going to take the debate day off. We're going to run a best of during the time because obviously our show airs during the debate, so we can watch the debate live. And directly after, we've got a good panel that we're going to bring on. Marshall Herskowitz, our good friend Greg Hurwitz, and Dr. Keith Pochek will be here to share their thoughts on the post-debate panel that we've put together. I'm looking forward to that in a big way. I think it's going to be interesting. I think the debate will be interesting, and I'm hoping, and this is where my mind goes. While I hope Kamala Harris rips him to shreds, I hope she goes all junkyard dog on him and takes a big chunk out of his hide from 12 feet away on the other side of plexiglass, of course. I hope she does refocus the fact that the economy's not in great shape. And for all the tweeting and all of the self-congratulatory language that Trump's spewing right now, people are still struggling. And the fact that they kicked down the road the stimulus that people are desperate to get right now should be highlighted in major ways. Trump's irresponsibility at every step of the way with this virus is something that she's going, and Pence's being okay with it. And the fact that, seriously, the fact that Pence is balking at there being a plexiglass divide is another one of those super irresponsible things. But I digress. There are many, many more things that need to be highlighted. And Pence has been kind of the handmaiden in all this. And I think he needs to be taken to task. What did he know? When did he know it? I hope she treats him like a witness on a stand and tears up to him one side and down the other. So badly that even Mother can't help him. And I started thinking about the plexiglass thing. It's kind of weird because you would think, a guy who can't be in the same room with a woman without Mother there, which is kind of kinky, I gotta say. You would think you would want the plexiglass divide. Now, obviously, I think Harris is going to go after how extreme he is because this is really the VP debate is really hey, if something goes wrong, because look, we got two guys in their mid-70s, we're going to be the ones that have to step in and do the job, and be the president. I hope she comes off as that way, as stern as she can be, and as take charge. I don't feel sorry for Mike Pence. He got himself in the middle of this, and now he's got a record. He's got to defend Donald Trump. All that talk about, if Biden picks a woman, they're going to have to defend all of his choices. And especially if he picks a woman of color, they're going to have to defend his race choices. She'll do that, and she'll do it well. But Mike Pence is going to have to defend Donald Trump's choices and the choices that he made on this virus. The choices that we know he made against what advice he was given at the beginning, because we got the tapes. And I know, we had the tapes of him saying, he moves on him like you know what, and he grabs him by the you know what, and all of that. That's different. That's just locker room talk. 210,000 people died because of what he did, or what he failed to do. And she's going to have to hammer on that. For me, it would be, oh, hey, Mike, that was a good point. Your guy killed 210,000 people by being incompetent and irresponsible. And probably, maybe, and I hope not, but maybe someone in your own staff. Because according to him, he had to contract the virus, which means everyone around him was going to be exposed to it. And he didn't bother telling anybody. But because that's what leaders do. That's what leaders do. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you'll tune in and see our post-debate panel. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people